Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, frequent flyers. Thank you for joining us today in the lounge. Today, my guest is Tim Wade, and we're going to be diving into safety in the cockpit, the office, and in the mind. My quote for today's session is "Don't learn safety by accident" by Jerry Smith. We're going to be diving into some of the hidden dangers of safety issues that often get overlooked in aviation, both out on the tarmac, in the air, and in the office, and why it's really important that we continue to have conversation around creating psychological safety, because the power of the mind and the ripple effect is so impactful, and we can use that to our advantage rather than to our disadvantage. Tim Wade is the Director of Environmental Health and Safety at Flexjet, and he's been in aviation since 2007, where he first began with the Army working on Apache helicopters. He also is a speaker like me, and he runs an amazing podcast where he goes into aviation safety news, and he regularly speaks on these topics at the Safety Stand Down with Bombardier, as well as other MBAA and aviation-related events. Tim, it's such a pleasure to have you with me here today.
It's outstanding to be on. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we connected through LinkedIn and we have mutual friends in the industry. We became fast friends because our mindsets are so similar. And so I wanted to ask you, you started your career in aviation working on the helicopters. What prompted you to go down the safety track? What was it that attracted you to finding a passion in this area?
So it actually started when I was stationed in South Korea. We would take the aircraft out for what we would call gunnery. We would sight in the Apaches, and they would get the rockets and their missiles sighted in properly. And I was one of the low guys on the totem pole, so all the grunt work was usually pitched to us. Well, we would shoot at this mountain, and in the summertime, we would set the mountain on fire. So we would grab these old like World War II era water cans and these rubber flappers, and we'd hike up this mountain and we'd put out the fire. And ironically, I ended up falling in love with firefighting at that time.
Okay.
So when I started transitioning out of the military, I was stationed in Fort Campbell. I went and got my EMT license. I got my firefighter and my medic license, and I became a volunteer firefighter at that time. And I really loved it. Still loved aviation. So when I was transitioning out of the Army, I'm like, oh, well, which path should I take? And I ended up going to school for fire and life safety for my associates, and then started getting into more of the health and safety regulations and really enjoyed that and enjoyed investigation. So I ended up getting my bachelor's in occupational health and safety. And when I was graduating with my bachelor's, the opening came up at Constant Aviation at the time for an EHS manager. And I always wanted to get back involved with aviation. I'm like, well, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and see if my two passions, my two joys can come together for one career. And they took a big chance on me at the time. And I started as the manager back in 2016 and worked my way up to a director. And the beauty of it back then was you were able to mold the safety program. It wasn't like, hey, here's your set rigid structure of rules, just go do them, like a lot of safety programs for these well-established organizations are. This was, you could create it from scratch. They gave you a lot of freedom to really experience all aspects of safety and to enjoy it. And that just stoked the passion for safety even more. So I get to do my two favorite things in life, which is serving others through safety, but also getting to play with airplanes every day.
Yes, I love it. When you were describing like what you were doing, you're basically like shooting at the mountain and setting it on fire. I was just thinking like, isn't that like every little boy's dream? Because
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that even sounded fun for me. But yes, getting to play with airplanes every day or play with rocket ships like I get to do now too is just so fun because you don't have to necessarily go do the thing. You don't have to go fly them or even turn the wrench on them, whatever it is. There's so many ways to get involved in this industry, which I think a lot of people often forget about. And so I love the path that you were able to find for yourself. And you just continually followed those breadcrumbs of what made you come alive and what interested you. And then that's what led you here.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think, and everyone in aviation kind of has that same feeling. It doesn't matter if you're flying it, turning wrenches on it, just being in the presence of aviation gives us all that inner child feeling of, it's like the little boys who see the train go by and they just want to hear the horn. Well, all of us in aviation, we want to see that paint glistening. We love smelling the jet fuel, and it's a joy to be around it all the time. So
Yes.
I'm glad that I've been able to make something that I've enjoyed for so many years, a career. Not many people get that opportunity. Usually it becomes a
Mm.
hobby, but those of us who are blessed enough to be in this field, we get to make a career out of it. And it's incredible.
Yes, I love that. And it is an opportunity. And oftentimes we get to create those opportunities. You made a really good point there about how you were working in a smaller team environment. And so you were able to help create the safety culture, help create the the rules, the SOPs. And that is something we don't get when we work for the like giant organizations that already have organizational structure, but also in order to change anything, it's just so bureaucratic and takes time and it's not easy, right? You're a cog in the machine. But in the private sector, general aviation sector of aviation, we really do get that opportunity to create. And so I always like to remind people in aviation, especially if they're an engineer or a pilot or, they're doing office work, that they are indeed creative because
Mhm.
we're literally doing that every single day, whether we're creating solutions for a flight or, going through a safety or even quality assurance protocol, right? There is a lot of creativity that can come into play.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And what I always tell, when we're at Bombardier Safety Stand Down and different events like that, where you have people from all walks of aviation, and even some people who are not involved in aviation. I spoke with someone who worked at a GM plant one time who wanted to improve their safety programs as well. Get out of the office, go out on the hangar floor, get your hands greasy, talk to the guys face to face, because that's going to flame those creative juices. It's going to give you a why, because you want to do this for the guys on the floor and the people turning the wrenches and the people in the cockpit. You want to do it for them, not just necessarily yourself writing this policy or changing this program or however you are. And the only way to get to that point is to be out on the floor, be out on the ramp, talk with the people involved, get safety out from behind the desk and actually just go do it.
Yes. I love that. Yes, get out from behind the desk and go and do it and having people involved, right? Because when we get the community involved and not just the community of our organization, but the
Mhm.
community of the industry, of the other members at the airport, that's when that safety culture really becomes like ingrained in the DNA. And that's
Mhm.
when it becomes less of the like, oh, yeah, I got to do the thing to
Mhm.
I get to do the thing and it's incredible. And, it's just like washing your hands after going to the bathroom. It's just something you do. It's a natural
Mhm.
response and it doesn't take extra energy and it creates a really safe environment for us to be able to continue to create and to continue to innovate and do the amazing things that can happen.
Exactly. Yep.
So, what are some of those safety items in the industry that you've seen over the course of your tenure in this space that often get overlooked? What are some of those hidden dangers, those small things that people might think not a big deal, or I can skip that step? What are some of the things that stand out to you in that regard?
Too often you'll see safety teams put way too much pressure on being safe,
Mm,
and they'll say the safety team's here to keep you safe. We're not. All right, that's a very old school mentality, that the safety team keeps you safe, which then translates into the safety team as the cops. Don't talk to them, don't
mm,
screw up around them, that sort of thing. And then you really taint the idea of safety. Safety is culture. Safety is a feeling of security, a sense of security when you're in the hangar or in the aircraft. Safety is caring for others. It's serving for others. And it's creating your programs to where they will serve others. So that being said, I think some of the things that we overlook sometimes are when you are not truly investing in safety, such as once, like we just said, if you're not out on the hangar floor, if you're not talking with people, if you're not showing them why safety is influential to their day-to-day life, they might cut corners at sometimes. They might go
mm,
around certain things. For example, if a technician is installing an antenna on top of an aircraft, it's not just once on top and then you're in and then you're done. They're up and down multiple times. And at some point they might get sick of tying in their fall protection. And it might
right.
be that one time that they didn't tie it in that they're going to have a fall. So that's those times where you really need to expound on how important safety is as a mindset of almost a self check as you're going throughout the day, so you don't
Mm,
skip over those tedious things. Now, Do falls happen in aviation? Very, very rarely. But it is a risk that we face, not only from a financial standpoint, because you don't want to get cited by OSHA or any of the regulators, but also from a safety standpoint of your employees. You want to make sure that they're well taken care of and well supported. So there's multiple things like fall protection, but that's just one that sticks out in my mind of the tedious sides of safety. You really need to make sure that it is explained well of why we do those things and why it's important to keep those in the back of your mind.
Absolutely. And I see a comment here from someone who's watching us live right now that it's complacency. It can be the biggest evil, right? Just that's also not just for safety, that's for your progress and professional development. A lot of people like do all this work to improve and learn and grow, and they become a manager, and all of a sudden they're coasting. And so
Mm-hmm.
they stop connecting with their team or their peers, and they stop learning and they stop doing those things, and then they start to fail. And it's the same thing with safety, right? If we become complacent, that's when we can overlook or skip things, and we're not connected to that deeper why.
Correct. And complacency is a huge factor with a lot of incidents going through aviation. And I think one of the things to combat it, if you look at the healthcare field and you look at especially emergency medicine on the ambulance, when you
Mm.
look at a typical fire department, it's not the same medic driving every single time, and it is not the
Right.
same guy first in the door for the fire department every time. They rotate positions so that way you are not just running through muscle memory every time you go in it. And the same thing needs to
Mm.
happen with your technicians. You need to rotate positions. You need to rotate expectations for the day and make sure that they have almost a fresh window, at least weekly, if not daily.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we do get into rote memory, and
Hmm.
we are creatures of habit, right?
Hmm.
Everyone listening to this, I'm sure you've had an experience where you've driven from work to home, and you get home and you're like, how did I get here? Right? You're
Hmm.
you're kind of checked out, you're coasting through. And so, you might have been thinking about something, you don't have the memory, but your body knew the steps to get there.
Hmm.
And so you made it safely that time. But if you're not fully present, if there is something that starts to occur, you might be slower to respond. And that's when something could happen. So that's a really good point about switching the
Hmm.
roles. And that's why OJT
Hmm.
is also, I believe, critically important, particularly when you're in a heavy operational role that has safety implications of people not
Hmm.
fully understanding what's taking place.
And I'm sure from like a Lean Six Sigma point of view that having like established teams really helps from a time factor, because you're gonna have your aircraft jacking and shoring team, and those are the guys
Right.
that always do it. However, from what I've seen is if you don't rotate those guys out and refresh them and have a different point of view often, they will become complacent because that's all they do every single day. And you
Right.
really gotta change up the mindset for them.
Yeah, that's a good point, because there will still be the need for efficiency and to, do one thing well. And so it's not that that's wrong. It's just adding that layer of the rotation or the refresher so that they can have the pattern interrupt, right? So that then that therefore the veil doesn't come down and they start, making mistakes or trying to multitask. Like, oh, I've done this 1,000 times. Let me respond to my emails while I'm doing this, or, let me take a phone call and be distracted, that kind of thing.
I think it was Tony Kern that once said, a simple mistake can erase a month of efficiency. And it's
Mm,
absolutely true. If you do a simple mistake on an aircraft, that aircraft could now be down for a month when it was just set to return to service that next day. So yeah,
absolutely.
efficiency is great, but complacency can kill any efficiency you have.
Yes, that is a great point. Excellent quote from Tony. He's awesome, and his podcast is great. For those of you watching, definitely go check it
I
out as
don't
well.
know how the man has the time to do a daily podcast. My goodness.
He's
It's putting us
definitely
all to shame.
like a superhero in the industry, right? And he's not afraid to call it like it is, and to really, show like take a stand for something. So I mean,
Hmm.
safety stand down, definitely tying into that phrasing, right? He takes a
Hmm.
stand for very important issues, and it's important because we also have a culture, not just in aviation, but in general in the
Hmm.
world today, of lack of accountability. If I CC everyone, then surely someone will do it. But guess what? When everyone is CC, no one does anything, right?
Hmm.
And so it's being very clear in the ask and very clear in the roles and responsibilities, and being willing to also put your hand up and say, like, I effed up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, because that's how we learn. Some of those are going to be expensive mistakes. Some of those, if we're not following safety protocol, can be very deadly mistakes. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
important that we don't have a fearful culture where people
Mm-hmm.
then try to hide things or figure it out on their own, and then we find ourselves down a track that we definitely don't want to be in.
And not to use old school safety terminology, but when you have an actual just culture, I know a lot of people say they do, but when you have an actual just culture, your employees won't be afraid to submit those mistakes and those hazards and those incidents. They don't mind doing that because they know their transparency is paving the way for a better tomorrow versus them being fearful for their job. If one technician can do it, another technician can do it. That's what I've
Right.
always said, because 90% of the people in leadership positions in the hangar started off on the hangar floor, and we all did dumb stuff when we were on the hangar floor. Thankfully, we stopped doing dumb stuff, and that's what led to us being in the positions we are today, for the most part. But it's those mistakes, when you own up to them, all you're doing is creating a better pathway for you guys tomorrow.
Absolutely. And it's I equate it to, I often like to use physical examples because people can
Mm-hmm.
understand them more. So if you're in the gym and you're training let's say you're training a complex weightlifting movement, right? If you just do it one time with the coach and then every other time you train by yourself and you're using poor technique and you're training this pattern and you're just like hoping that you're doing it right,
Mm-hmm.
then there's a lot to undo versus just getting that foundation correct. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's so important that, like, once we recognize, like, hey, that's not correct, we want to regularly check in. This is not just a, hey, let's do a safety check
Mm-hmm.
once a year or once a month. This is an everyday, as you said, it's a state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, as you're going through your actions, is this efficient? Is this safe? How can we make sure that it's not so efficient it's unsafe, and it's not so
Mm-hmm.
safe that it's not efficient? Because safety for safety's sake, and putting like boxes around boxes to try to contain something, it's like bubble boy, right? You cannot
Yeah.
account for everything, but how do we make sure that we are going down this path that has like least resistance, it's smooth, to your point earlier, and
Mm-hmm.
we can get the buy-in, we can show people why it's so important.
That's a great analogy, because even in safety, your form is most important. Adding the heavy weight down the line is going to happen at some point. But if you get that form, if you get that core, and I think in safety, the core form that we're looking for your weightlifting analogy, would be the trust in the safety team. That's what's going to be your central point, and then you can build out all the cool things on top of that. But if you don't have trust, SMS is going to fail. If you don't have trust, risk assessments and audits are going to fail. If you don't have
Right.
trust, your reporting culture is going to suck, and it's going to go right down the tube. Okay. That trust in the safety team and that trust in your program is essential for everything that safety touches, which in a normal organization, doesn't matter if you're aviation or not, safety touches everything.
Absolutely. And that's a real good tie-in to the point about psychological safety,
Mm-hmm.
because if there is no trust, I may not be willing to fill out that form. I may not want to report something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I might get defensive. I might, not really give all the information because I'm scared of retaliation or of looking bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
The trust also, not just for safety of the operation from that physical standpoint, but the trust of your clients, the
Mm-hmm.
trust of the industry, the trust with the FAA. It extends outward from there. Like, trust is that center piece where all the spokes come out from. And without
Right.
it, you'll have a toxic environment because people aren't going to be communicating, or they're going to be making assumptions. And we all
Mm-hmm.
know what happens when assumptions are made, right? So that's a really great point. And trust is really the foundational piece, and it's absolutely critical in aviation.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Did you see the Blue Angels documentary that just came out recently?
No, I haven't.
Okay. It's fantastic, especially if you love
Okay.
airplanes and fighter jets. Um, but there's a moment in there because, they talk about that process. That
Mm-hmm.
pilot, yeah, the Blue Angels, that pilot and Thunderbirds are the same. They get into the cockpit of that aircraft fully trusting the team that set them up for that flight.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing all of the things themselves. So they have the full and utmost trust of their team that their aircraft is ready to go and that everything is smooth and safe and where it needs to
Mm-hmm.
be. And not many people could necessarily say that about, just forget about even flying an airplane, their day-to-day operations, right? How many times do
Mm-hmm.
people do things for you and you're like, I'm just going to double check. I'm just going to,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that wastes time, it spends energy, and it also can erode trust between you and the other person. So it's really important
Mm-hmm.
that this becomes a focal feature.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So when we talk about psychological safety, I know this is
Mm-hmm.
a newer term, right? And I know Kimberly Perkins is actually working on her doctorate on psychological safety in the cockpit, which I think is phenomenal because that research is going to be used with not only airlines, but it's going to trickle down
Mm-hmm.
into all facets of aviation. What do you see around this topic that I'm sure you have some flight crew or people in the office that are like, whatever, in my day, right? Suck it up, buttercup,
Mm-hmm.
just do the thing. What are the conversations being had around this topic, and where do you think we can bridge that gap?
Well, it definitely spans generations because if you look at the brand new technicians and your young pilots coming in, they have been a part of a generation that has had social media access their
Mm,
entire life. And they identify heavily in their outward appearance to the world. They do not want to appear stupid. They do not want to appear
mm,
uneducated and different from anybody. So you see a lack of questions and hesitation when a mistake happens, and them trying to fix things. Where you forward to the 40-year technician and the pilots getting ready to get out, uh, some of them have great reporting instincts because they have been brought up in an organization that has supported them. However, you will see those who were part of a damaged relationship 20 years ago, and
mm.
they are still bitter to the point of, well, I'm not submitting a hazard, I'm not submitting an incident, I don't care. They have been psychologically broken on the fundamentals of safety, and it's very hard to repair that. So you're 2024 safety team right now needs to be able to bridge the gaps on both ends of these, needs to be able to have conversations with both sides of these, identify with them and see what they're going through, because the span right now, it's a very odd time. You see
Yeah,
very different mental health on both sides of the spectrum.
so fascinating. And the generational concept is definitely a conversation because at leadership this year, I did the PDP
Hmm.
course with Scott Moore, and he had everyone stand in different parts of the room based on, like, were you a baby boomer, a Gen X, a
Hmm.
millennial? And there were no Gen Zs in the room.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is a leadership conference, yes. But if you
Hmm.
want to train the next group of leaders, there should be some Gen Zs in this room so that they
Hmm.
can understand and they can have this conversation. But it was really interesting because we went through a series of questions and the viewpoints and the perspectives of everybody sharing from these different groups. And then hearing, like physically seeing people stand in different parts of the room and then sharing what they experienced and what their view was
Hmm.
on a certain thing was really powerful because it really just broke it down of like, oh, this is just because our perspective is different. It's not that you're trying to be difficult. It's just
Hmm.
you grew up in a different environment. You were trained in a different environment, right?
Hmm.
The requirements on you were very, very different. And I mean, only just what, a month ago, maybe a little over, we had the change to the regulations so that pilots could
Hmm.
seek talk therapy,
Hmm.
right? And so we're making progress in the right
Hmm.
direction, but it's still slow progress, and there's still going to be that kind of hesitancy
Hmm.
to go down that route. What has
I,
been the conversation in your team around that?
I would hate to see, and I think a lot in the safety spec share the same opinion, that I would hate to see the slowness to respond on the FAA's part right now to mental health and awareness, that people will start to lose faith in aviation and that they're not moving fast enough on this issue, because we've been talking about this issue for
Oh,
years now.
yeah.
It's
It's not a new
so we've
issue.
been blue in the face. No, absolutely not. What was it, 5 or 6 years ago, was the main focus at base, was mental health awareness. And then just a couple years ago, again, mental health awareness, and we've had great speakers. And you know I hated how slow they were with SMS and getting SMS across the finish line. I understand it needed a lot of work to be done with that, but for goodness sakes, get it done. Yeah,
Well, and
that's the
also
whole
in
point with
other
me.
parts of the world, they've been using SMS. Like when I came back in 2022, and I then spoke at schedulers and dispatchers in 23, I remember being confused about everybody so excitable around SMS because I'd been using it for 10 years
Mm-hmm.
based in Asia, right? Different aircraft registries were already using SMS programs. And so, it's really just interesting again, like based on where you are and what you're exposed to and what the requirement is, what people will do. But we should also not need it to be a requirement for us to want to do it because that's such an
Mm-hmm.
integral piece of safety.
Mm-hmm. When I think it was 2017, we were getting audited by a small African country, and I forget which one it was. But it would necessarily be a country that us in America would call the third world.
Right.
And the first line item on their audit is show me your SMS program.
Mhm.
And you pull out a binder and they go, what is this? And I'm like, SMS program. They said, no, no, no. Show me the SMS program. It is not just a binder. So even there, in a country that we probably would think we are high and mighty against, had a better understanding of SMS than we did at the time. And we're just now getting across the finish line. It's embarrassing to
Mhm.
be the US of, what we think is the proper way to do aviation. And you look at almost every other country with a functioning aviation system, they're light years ahead of it. They're light
Yeah.
years ahead in training, in safety, and now in SMS.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it's a wake-up call, and I know
Yeah.
I've heard some people say like, "Oh, COVID really made a lot of people mentally unstable." And I was like, "No, no, no, no. COVID was just the great revealer
Mm-hmm.
of what was already there, but we were suppressing, numbing out to ignoring and like getting distracted by other things for. And that just made it impossible to do any of those things. And so
Mm-hmm.
now it's finally getting that long overdue attention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it is embarrassing.
Yeah. And I would hate the mental health, which we're finally getting a foothold on, be the same slow to respond process that SMS was. It deserves much more respect than it's getting. And like I said, I'm glad it's getting the attention that it is, but it's not enough. And if anything showed us how this one might go is SMS, and I really hope it's a different story.
I hope so too. I hope so too. I mean, I was just speaking with another speaker connection of mine yesterday, and she was saying that according to boards in the U.S. and North America, 43% of corporate workers are burnt out right now. That's almost half our workforce. And what happens when you have burnout? You have disengagement. You have people getting more sick, right? Your healthcare costs go
Mm-hmm.
up. They're present, but they're not actually functional. And then they're the ones training the next generation. And the next generation is different. Like there's actually the new term. Have you heard of the term slasher?
No, I have not.
So
I
when
feel
I got
so
asked
old
this
these
question,
days.
and then when I got asked this question, I was like, "What? Like Scream? Like what are you
Like
talking about?"
Mike Myers. We grew up with Mike Myers. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's because in today's workforce, people do multiple things. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
speaker slash poet slash, whatever you add to the list. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of Gen Z, well, their careers are going to be like that. There's going to be more entrepreneurial kind of contract type of work rather than that, 40, 50-year career that we used to see.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mindset is very different. And money is just one form of currency.
Mm-hmm.
Time and health are other forms of currency. And,
Correct.
we want to spend time with our families. We want to be healthy enough to spend time with our families doing fun things rather than
Mm-hmm.
going to the doctor all the time. And as well as I do that in aviation, there's too many people at young ages having serious health complications, heart attacks,
Yeah.
strokes,
Mm-hmm.
all these autoimmune diseases. And so that's why this is so important. It's not just so that we can follow the rules or, be safe in the air. It's so that, you can have a good life and,
Mm-hmm.
you can be there for your family, for your friends, and actually enjoy, nerding out about airplanes when you're doing your job or when you're not doing your job. So you can actually enjoy the places that you get to visit, all of those types of things.
It's really concerning to see the slasher movement, as you said, which That kind of started really heavily during COVID when people were like, well, I'm doing my job remote and I've got extra time throughout the day. I can just, tack on another career to that. And then they're being raised and mentored by this generation that you said is 43% burnt out. So we are now teaching them how to work burnt out while they multitask in multiple careers.
Right.
And you wonder where that's just going to snap at some point.
Absolutely. It's not sustainable. And,
No, not at all.
we spend the millennial generation too it is so like entrenched in the concept of purpose and work. And there, of course, I believe in that. I think that's important to have. It's also not necessary that your source of income to put food on the table and a roof over your head is your purpose. Your
Mm-hmm.
purpose might be the foundation that you work with, or the church that you attend, or the
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit that you start, or whatever it is. It doesn't always have to be the main thing. And it's really like detaching. Millennials are the I am this,
Mm-hmm.
whether the this is a job title or an emotion. So it's over
Mm-hmm.
identifying with the things that we do rather than who we are as people. And I'm hoping that we can start to shift that narrative and slow down a little bit, because you can't run that race forever at that high speed. Something's look at Formula One cars. They race very
Mm-hmm.
fast, right? They still
Mm-hmm.
need to go in for a pit stop. Now, granted, their pit stops are a few seconds, right? But that race is
Mm-hmm.
in a container of time. And in between those races, there's protocols for the car, for the racer, so that they can continue at that high performance. We're no different.
Mm-hmm. I've seen in the hangar a few times a sign that says something along the lines of schedule your preventative maintenance before your preventative maintenance schedules it for you by something
Yes.
breaking, essentially. And that's the same thing for your mental health. That's the same thing for your physical well-being. You need to take those breaks. I'm coming off of 2 weeks vacation, like we were talking, and
Yeah.
it was refreshing because it was one of the first times that I've really just put down the devices and I was fully invested in the vacation. And guess what? The building didn't burn down. And for the past like 10 years, I thought it would. I thought I was the sprinkler keeping the building alive, and it's not. There's a wonderful team that's keeping this building going. And I was able to take that time and truly focus on my family. And everybody needs that. Everyone needs to know that it will be okay. It will be here in 2 weeks. You'll be fine. Go take a break already.
Right. What a relief it is to not have the ego running the show,
Mm-hmm.
right? To just be like, it's going to be okay. I don't
Yeah.
have to do all the things.
I'm not that important. I can leave
Right?
for a
Like when
few
you just
minutes. It'll be all right.
realize that you're not that important, then it's like, wow, I can just enjoy myself. This is great. Go take a nap.
Weirdly, that sounds terrible on the surface, but it's so true. It really is. Like take a breath. Take a breath. You are not the foundation of the entire organization. I'm sure there are some people on this call that are, but just take a breath. Take a break because you're going to be better for it when you get back, and everybody who has to deal with you when you get
Right?
back will be as well.
We've all had to deal with that boss who like never actually shuts down, and then they're just
Mhm.
like the headless chicken running around even when they're on their holiday, and you're like, please, for the love of God, just put your phone down. Like,
Yes.
let us
It's
do it.
2:30
We know how
in the
to do
morning.
it.
I'm not responding to you.
um, and you know what? If you are I get it. If you're a solopreneur, you're kind of the foundation because
Yep.
it's you, right? Like, will Pivot Point International be around if I got hit by a bus tomorrow? No, because it's me. That's different. But when you have an organization of 10 people, 50 people, 500 people, 5,000 people, and everything has to rest on your shoulders, that's a bottleneck. And
Mhm.
that is not sustainable. So it's creating something that can run on its own. Like you shouldn't want to do that. I had a conversation with someone earlier today, and his literal words were, I realized I don't want to work that hard. Like
Mhm.
ambition for ambition's sake, give me another 1,000 people to manage. Like for what? So I can be more stressed and work longer hours? No, thank you. I'd rather be able
Mhm.
to have a good lifestyle. And so many people don't stop to think. They're just like, let me climb this mountain. And the mountain peak keeps getting higher and higher. And they never stop to assess, like, hey, do I actually even want to be here?
Mhm. And if you have to shoulder all of that with the workforce alongside of you, are you hiring the correct people? Why aren't you hiring the people that share the workload, not create the workload? Okay. It should
Yeah.
be distributing it, and then you're going to move everybody up together, because then now they're learning your job, you can get the next one, and they move up. It should be a cycle like that, versus I'm going to take it all on because I only trust myself and I can't trust the other people. Well, then you didn't hire the right people, or you shouldn't be in charge of hiring in the first place.
Right, or leading a team.
Yes,
Because
you should
again,
not
it
be a
goes
leader
back,
if you can't trust your team.
right, it goes back to trust, right? It's also self-trust. And I see
Yes.
Marcus is commenting here. It's that trust, that knowing that whatever does happen, even if the building did burn down, that when you get back, you'll be able to figure it out. You'll handle it. And the people that you left in charge are handling it to the best of their ability. And look, unless you're really off grid, there's probably a way to contact you. I mean, I've definitely done that where
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I will not have internet. There's no sat phone, nothing. So there is no option to reach me. There's also been holidays where I'm like, my phone is literally in the safe, but if you absolutely need me, you can call the hotel. I remember the first
Mm-hmm.
time I did that, I would like check with the front desk every day. Are there messages? There were no messages. So by the fourth day, I was like, they'll call my room if there are messages. And the rest of the trip, I think I had another like 6 days there. I didn't wear a watch. I just like got to enjoy
Mm-hmm.
myself. And it was again that trust, and like I had to slowly build up the trust of, yeah, they'll contact me if they need. And it's also okay to let go.
Mm-hmm. My team, when I was gone this past 2 weeks, love them to death for doing this. They stopped. I'm auto CC'd on a lot of things going through. If it's a certain topic or subject, we're all kind of CC'd on the safety department. They took me off of it. And at one point, I'm like, this feels weird. I should usually have 50 emails in my inbox today, and I
Yeah.
only had like 5. And they're like, yeah, we're fine. Everything's fine. If we
Yeah.
truly need you, we know how to get a hold of you. We're all on the same text group because it's a very close knit team, but they purposely left me alone because they knew that was better for the team. And we have such a well established team right now that's working hand in hand together, that when each of us does take a vacation, it's going to be, turn your stupid phone off already. You need to reset. That's the reason you're going on vacation. That's healthy for you. And if it's healthy for you, it's healthy for the team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because when you've got all of those things running in the background and you're not fully off, you're not coming back rejuvenated.
No.
And then that means your runway is not very long, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you're going to burn out more quickly. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
really about being intentional. And different people have different needs, right? Some people's 50% is going to be other people's 100%. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes for the same person, right? Depends on the season. What are you going through? Are you having a health crisis? Is someone in your family, like, do you have elderly parents? Did you just have a brand new baby? There's different seasons of life where your routine and your capabilities will shift. And what used to be like a breeze now feels like, the whole world is on your shoulders, but nothing changed in terms of your workload. It's just the way you're
Mm-hmm.
perceiving it is different. And so
Correct.
it's really important for us to have enough self-awareness to be able to have the crucial conversations, ask for help. And, also, if your organization is not necessarily like Tim's, right? How can you create those boundaries for yourself? How can you ask for things? And then if they're not being met or honored, considering that maybe you're not in the best workplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what we
Exactly.
tolerate, we perpetuate. So if we're not demanding higher levels of standards, it won't change.
Nope. I fully agree.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about the power of the mind. Can you tell me an
Okay.
experience that you've had? Because a lot of people, they're like, oh, this is a little bit woo woo. And it's absolutely not. There's actually anyone who thinks that it's woo, go look up Dr. Ellen Langer at Harvard University. The latest research on the power of the body mind connection, phenomenal, fascinating. It's like confirming a lot of ancient wisdom from like Ayurvedic, traditional Chinese medicine that we used to not believe really because it wasn't science, but now we have the science for. But I want to know
Mhm.
from you, have you had a personal or a professional moment where that mindset shift for you was really powerful? And then what was the ripple effect once you had that shift?
I would say after I had been at Constant for a few months and I started getting kind of how we talked at the beginning of the call, I started getting that freedom of the position of I can go create this and I can go do this. And it was a big mindset shift coming from the world of hourly employee. I worked a set of hours, and I did certain tasks, and it was very micromanaged. And then you had the mindset set shift of you are free to almost be creative in the position. Usually when you think safety, you don't think you can be creative, but there are so many avenues to actually be creative, especially with your safety promotion, going back to your employees of what we're doing and how we're supporting you guys. So that was big for me, because I was now able to breathe and go, okay, what is truly best for our teams? And we have different teams, and we have teams in Ohio versus Florida, that completely different cultures, completely different
Right.
areas, different needs. And had I not had that freedom, I don't think some of the safety programs that I influenced would be where they are today, because it would be too rigid and structured. And you need that understanding that people are different.
Yeah.
And it's not just a cookie cutter safety program. So I loved the mindset shift of the freedom that I was blessed with in the position I was in to start building this. And it has now grown. And that's just how our team operates right now. Our leadership goes, here's where the focus of the team needs to be. Here's the big bucket projects that we have going on. Go, my children. And then we come back, and sometimes you come back and they go, yeah, it's a load of crap. And other times you come back and it's like, oh, that's awesome. So it's, like I said, this team is working extremely well together, but a lot of it is just very, very self-motivational of, we are all learning best because it's our hands in the pot, which definitely comes back on, it's our responsibility and our responsibility to others to produce a great product in the safety team.
Yes. I love that you just use that word, responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to, and this is just human nature, to
Mm-hmm.
pass blame to external circumstances when it's something that didn't go well or we don't like. And then at the same time, we often assign internal blame for things that are outside of our control. And so it's really getting clear on, taking ownership of things. You have a personal responsibility to yourself and to the agreements that you make, whether that's a work agreement or a personal agreement, and not finding the easy way out, the cop out. Right.
It's there's a lot of times, and I know our safety team's no different from most that I've worked with, where safety is the bottleneck. We're CC'd on everything. Let me get safety's permission for this. Let me do this. And uh, most people in those situations, you need to be responsible for it. It is your line of work, not necessarily safety. We're not the blessing over everybody. It is your,
We see.
yeah, stop CCing us on almost everything. But we, in an authoritative way, because we want to be CC'd for a as a resource for sure. And then the other side of responsibility is how we were talking about trust earlier. My favorite word for trust is integrity. That was impaled in our brains in the Army, is to have integrity, which is self-respect and self-responsibility. I'm responsible for my actions, and I alone am responsible for that. And to have integrity means I'm going to own up for whatever I do, no matter what I do. And that also goes into self-respect, self-care, and bleeds into everything almost.
Yeah. And with that word integrity, it's also the state of being unimpaired. It's literally
Mm-hmm.
like if we talk about science, physics, it's the condition of being whole or undivided. So
Mm-hmm.
how can you show up with integrity means that you're not removing a piece of yourself or trying to hide something or of the process and system because you don't like it or it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
favorable. And so that is another crucial point, because when we start to lose integrity within ourselves, it's a slippery slope. And the way you do one thing
Mm-hmm.
is the way you do all things. So if you start trying to manipulate and have this look a certain way over here, it will trickle over, maybe not right away, but slowly over time into the other ways that you show up. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
why that is, and that ties in with the trust.
Mm-hmm. My wife always says to our kids, I love this phrase, trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. And
Mm,
to have integrity to your safety team, to any team that you work for, is the exact same way. All right. You need it. You can lose it so quickly the moment, as you said, when you leave a piece of yourself behind or you hide it because you're not showing full integrity to the people that are responsive to you.
yeah. Yeah, and it can be hard, right? Like the other
Hmm.
day I missed a call with someone and I could have been like, "Oh, I was," whatever excuse I could have made up so it sounded like more legitimate. The truth is I went to cuddle my dog and I fell asleep. That was it. And so I didn't even hear my phone ring. I woke up like 30 minutes later and was like, "Oh, that was a great night. Oh, yep, I missed a call. Great." So I called her
You had
back.
a human moment.
I had a human moment and I told
Hmm.
her and she's like, "You know what? That's so refreshing that you told me the truth."
Hmm.
And it didn't impair it actually made the relationship better. And it was for a conference I'm going to be speaking at coming up and they're putting me on two other things. And so, you know, obviously there's pressure there to like look perfect and present a
Hmm.
certain way. And this, I was honest about the human moment, which made her like, yes, we want this because I'm also going to be talking to students. So mentoring, like
Hmm.
it's okay to have a human moment, and being there was a version of Sarah 5 years ago. God, no, I could have never done that.
Hmm.
Oh, I would have probably had a breakdown even thinking about it. But now it's like I'm just going to own up to it because that also gives other people permission to own up to their things and to not feel so nervous and scared all the time. And actually, studies show the more nervous you are, the more that impacts your performance.
Hmm.
Even just doing anything you can to remain calm before a test, before an exam, before your flight, before the big check ride, whatever it is, you will statistically perform better than if you're nervous and letting your excitement build like that.
Hmm. And to go back to your example, had you come up with some random excuse that was not honest, when they have you on the books for two things, they might have then felt like they're overburdening you, and you might ruin your chances of further opportunities just because you
Right.
weren't open and honest. It's like,
Yeah.
well, we can give Sarah opportunity. She had the opportunity to snuggle her dog. Okay, so
Yeah.
she's got a little time on her hands. Let's give her some more opportunities.
Exactly. Like, and she's going to be honest with us either way.
There you go. Yep.
And that's the point. Because also when you do come up with those little white lies, those little excuses, or you're kind of sliding the truth a little bit, people can feel it,
Yeah.
right? They can sense, like if I would have said, "Oh, my call ran late," the tone of my voice, she might have just been like, "Did her call really run late?" I don't know,
Hmm.
you know? Um, Whereas because I just shared the truth and it was like, "Okay, well, no problem, that happened." Now if I'm missing every single phone call because I'm falling asleep taking naps with my dog, well, that's a different story. Then I'll switch
You're
careers.
living everyone's best life at that point.
Right, exactly, like, that's just like a dream, right? I actually
Hmm.
did have a dream once surrounded by puppies, and then I woke up and I was like, "That was literally heaven." That was, like, the best dream I've ever had.
There will be puppies in heaven.
Oh, yes, there will, definitely. I still do you
Yes.
remember that movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven? The
Absolutely.
cartoon? That was one of my favorite movies. I used to love that movie. Charlie,
Yep.
was one of my
Yep.
favorite
Charlie.
movies. Yeah. Oh my
Gotta
god.
watch that back to back with Air Bud. They go to hand in
Yes,
hand.
oh my gosh. I feel like there's gonna be or, like, what was it, Space Jam? Space
Hmm.
Jam was a classic, as
Hmm.
well. You go back and you watch these old movies. I remember going back and watching, like, The Neverending Story. There's
Hmm.
great, like, morals and things in there, but it just obviously doesn't capture your attention as an adult as it much as it did as a child, but still, I'm just like, "Wow, there's some, like."
Rewatching my favorites as a parent
Oh, yeah.
now, I'm like, what were my parents thinking? Like, watch Mrs. Doubtfire or The
Oh my
Sandlot,
god,
and you would be
Mrs.
like,
Doubtfire is the
there's
best.
so much in that movie that you're like, nope, you're not watching that till you're 24.
I literally my mom and I wore the VHS out on Mrs. Doubtfire. We had to get a second tape.
That's
We
a
liked
sign
it
of the
so
times for
much.
sure.
Yeah,
We just
absolutely.
really aged ourselves right there.
I know. Actually, I saw somebody post on their kid's iPad from school. There was a security question. It was like because parents had to check the homework, and the
Hmm.
question was, what does VHS stand for?" And it was like for their 8-year-old or something. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, this is amazing because yeah, I remember the first time a girl asked me what a fax machine was, and I was like, "Where am I? How old are you? Why are we in the same vicinity?" Because I was like at a party. I was like,
Hmm.
this feels weird. You're like a child. Okay, I need to go over here."
The tough ones is when you're hiring in new technicians or new pilots, and you're doing like the safety brief, and you mention something about 9/11, and then you realize half the people in the room were not alive on 9/11, and you're like,
Right.
how are you turning wrenches on an aircraft right now? All right, you
Oh
should
my
be in.
god. Or like Die Hard. Die Hard came out in 1988. What?
Oh, that's painful.
Isn't that weird? It's
Yep.
so weird. Oh man. Or like when people say 20 years ago, literally my brain thinks the 2000s, but I mean, sorry, the 80s, but it's the 2000s.
I at least
Uh,
think 90s, but yeah, still same
yeah.
thing. I don't think.
Yeah. Time is an illusion. We'll chalk it
Yep.
up to that. All right. Amazing. Tim, this has been so awesome. I have some questions for you that I always like to
Sure.
ask all of my guests. So my first question is, what do you believe your superpower is?
I have a good one and a dumb one. The dumb one
Okay.
would be I can listen to a song 1,000 times and probably not remember the words to it. But I can watch a
Okay.
movie once and probably recite it start to finish. I don't know why.
That
Maybe that's
is
the
a
left right
superpower.
brain side thing. Yeah. But I would say a superpower that I love about not just myself but my family. We love having people gather together for a meal. We love being the
Mm,
house where the families gather. We always thought it would be a great place to have our friends and families, our neighbors always come over. So instead of doing, spending money on like a new car or trip or something like that, we're like, well, let's invest it into like the backyard and make the backyard look
mm,
nice, and have meeting spaces because we love sharing a meal with. We have some great neighbors that are in our area. We have some great families from our church, and we both have families that live close by. So it was always wonderful to have people over. So I would say gathering together for a meal and having just a wonderful time with friends and family has always been fun because our house is kind of set up like a daycare. So, all of our friends and families have kids. So it's like the last time we had our families, our church families over, there was 5 families and I think 18 kids between the 5 families.
wow.
And it's just a packed house. But you know what? Was there food on the floor when we were done? Absolutely. A couple bags of trash that you got to take out? Absolutely. Was the house just raining with joy the entire time? For
Yeah.
sure. And that's the biggest part.
I love that. That is definitely a superpower, and cultivating community like that is what a
Hmm.
lot of people are missing.
Yeah.
And I believe that when we treat our relationships like a garden, right? We're cultivating, we're
Hmm.
paying attention, and we're also noticing like, hey, these things are different. How do we give it what it needs? How do I get what I need? What are the environments I'm going to thrive in where I'm not going to have to spend all this energy to have the joy? That's
Hmm.
really powerful. So yeah, thank
When
you
you
for that.
when you talk to somebody who only has 1 or 2 people in their lives, maybe it's just a girlfriend or just the people they work with, and they don't have that community and those families around them. You definitely see a difference in those who are surrounded by community, and you want that for them. And sometimes those people even think that they are happy in the way they are. They're happy with solitude, and that could be true. But I see the joy that my kids get and these families get when we are all joined together, and you just want that for others.
Absolutely. And everyone has different requirements based on their energy levels, introvert, extrovert, etc. But we are social creatures. Humans are herd animals, whether we like to admit it or not. We thrive in community. All the blue zones, everyone used to think it was just the diet or the weather. No, it's also because they have community and
Hmm.
they have a support system. And I was at an eclipse event for the April 8th solar eclipse, and we
Hmm.
did this magic of human connection session. Oh my gosh, Jessica is amazing. So anyone who was there will know what I'm talking about. But she led us through this 90-minute series of exercises. And in the beginning, even just the like walking around the room, making eye contact with people, some people were like not
Hmm.
able to look at you, right? And by the end, everyone's just like so full of joy and like giving each other hugs and just playing. And it was so much fun, especially because the room was full of a lot of like intellectuals, engineers,
Hmm.
astronauts, this kind of thing. And one of them said, I'm an introvert and I didn't realize how much I was missing this. I never knew that I
Hmm.
even wanted it. But
Hmm.
now I know, and like, wow, this is incredible. And so sometimes we convince ourselves we don't need something because we've just never been exposed to it, so we don't know. But also sometimes it's a protection mechanism, right?
Hmm. Or exposed to it in a healthy way, because
Right.
I'm extroverted for sure, and my wife is a little more introverted, so large crowds and stuff like that will definitely suck the energy out of her. However, if you get her in, with our church groups or something like that, or our families, you can just see her glow with that. So
Yeah.
if it's in a healthy aspect for your introverts, they're going to get a lot of energy out of that as well.
Oh, absolutely. My partner's the
Mhm.
same. He's more of the like reserved, quiet type. And, but when we're hosting or we have like our group together, he totally comes alive and is,
Mhm.
talking and engaging and everything. Sometimes he'll excuse himself and, have a moment and then come back. But when you're, at that massive music festival or in the middle of New York City with all the people around you, that can be overwhelming. And so it's about, being intentional. Again,
Mhm.
cultivating the spaces that you want to be in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's a little plug for those of you who follow me that something I'm working on, which I'm going to be announcing in the next couple of months. But well,
Ooh,
stay tuned for
teasers.
that. Yeah, teaser, little
Absolutely.
teaser. Um, okay, my next question. When we go through
Okay.
life, we often have a lot of people we check in with. And,
Mhm.
I like to call this our personal board of advisors. And so this can
Mhm.
be people in your inner circle. It can be people that, maybe listen to their podcast or, their previous president or, whatever. They don't even have to be alive. It could be a character from a show
Mhm.
or an avatar. Who are those people that you kind of check in with and go through their filters when you have big decisions to make?
Um, First and foremost, my faith is always my cornerstone, and that's
Mhm.
how I'm trying to raise my girls, and how my relationship with my wife is. And if God is centered in my life, then the rest of my life has direction and meaning, because we're able to go from there. So God, my spouse. You mentioned podcasts, which when I've heard you ask this question before, I always thought I had a great answer for this, but I never thought to go outside the people I normally communicate with.
Yeah.
And the first podcast that always comes to mind for me, for this then, would be Joe DeSena's podcast. He is the CEO of Spartan Races, and he's got a podcast called The Hard Way, and he goes through basically how to be uncomfortable in life, which sounds
Mm.
terrible, to appreciate the times where you do have comfort. He for years just walked around with kettlebell, and he would just walk around with it. And then people would say, "Well, you're crazy for that." And he goes, "I don't even realize I have it anymore, but I'm able to do this. I'm able to carry this weight all the time." And then he crafted the Spartan races and all this, and I'm absolutely addicted to Spartan races for sure now. But
Do you also do
great.
Spartan races?
Yep, I've got one coming up
Amazing.
at the end of August. I'm doing the trifecta for the first time with a buddy of mine.
Okay, cool. I'm
Uh,
now going to follow this podcast. I'm totally into that stuff. So amazing.
he's got great perspective on why people do the ice baths and stuff like that. And it's like people go, "Well, I could never get for go into this ice bath." And it's like, it's not the ice bath that's the purpose, it's the after effects. It's not the walking with the kettlebell that's purpose, it's the after effects. It's proven to
Yeah.
yourself that you can be uncomfortable, and that way when little things that wouldn't even bring somebody normal joy are just absolutely enlightening to you at that point. So I would
Absolutely.
definitely put him on there. But then, as I mentioned before, with all the people that we always, have at our house and we share meals with, we break bread with, I have a great solid core of families and strong men in my life that make me a stronger man, for my family. And I love having that foundation and those people in my life that I can always rely on. But with a board of advisors, as you call it, you always have give and take. So a board of advisors is going to give you direction, but you need
Hmm.
to give them back transparency and accountability.
Yeah.
And to have a solid board of advisors is not just to go, "You're doing a great job all the time, all the time." No, a board's going to keep you accountable. And the people that I have in my life do a great job. They're not jerks, thankfully, but they do a great job of, when you need course correction, they're going to give you course correction, but they're also going to give you the praise as well. So they're, like I said, I'm surrounded by some amazing people that really just course correct me all the time.
Yes. And that's awesome because we do need that course correction.
Hmm.
And sometimes we are just so focused on the outcome or the thing that we're in it, and we can't always see that. So that's awesome. And I'm so glad that you um, have that and that you shared the
Hmm.
podcast. I'm excited to dig into that.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
hope I didn't get the title wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, and it's,
No, no, no. I
uh,
checked it. That is what it's
there you
called.
go.
Yeah.
You were
So
super
it's
quick on that.
Spotify, iTunes. Yeah, I'm like the wizard behind the scenes over here,
I know your
doing
little things pop up. I'm like, she's got to have a secretary behind her, but it's just the sleeping dog, and I really don't think she's doing it.
Yeah, not yet, not yet. No, she's snoring. She's very comfortable over here. She reminds me to take breaks and to take naps. So maybe
There
after
you
this
go.
podcast, I'll take a little power. I took a power nap earlier, actually, so I'm set for the day.
Turn your ringer up a little bit this time.
Yeah. All right. Final question. This is a self-awareness
Sure.
question. It is, how do you best represent and serve humanity from the context and the lens of an alien race has come to Earth? You are the first human that they meet. What do they learn about humanity because they've met you? What do they see?
That somebody can actually eat that many tacos.
Yes. I love it.
I will definitely show them some great food.
We got to go eat tacos now. Tacos are the answer to life, basically, and 42, but I digress.
There you go. When I first read this question, I thought of that line from The Whale for a moment, that people are amazing, and they truly are. People are amazing. Media would have you think otherwise. Media would have you think that every person is evil and that there's just death and destruction at every corner. But I really think that humanity in general has some amazing qualities going on right now, and there are just people out there all the time just wanting better for others and going above and beyond to do it. Go to any Aldi parking lot, and you're going to see someone sweet that has no problem giving you their quarter for their cart. That's
Right.
you surround yourself with those people. I've mentioned my faith before. There's a scripture in Galatians that says, carry each other's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. And even if you're not a Christian, even if you're not religious, that carries through to almost everything. Carry another one's burdens and you will be doing good. Because a lot of times people think to serve others just mean I'm going to hold the door for you or I'm going to do something small for you. Serving others is mowing your neighbor's grass even if they don't need you to do it. Serving others is making a meal and giving it to a neighbor that you've never met before and going, "Hi, I'm Tim. Would you like to share a meal with me? Would you like to come over? We're having burgers and hot dogs. Come over." That is serving. It's taking on the burden of what someone else is going through and being that light for them.
Yeah, it's the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a transactional thing. It's not like I'm doing this for you so that one day you can. No, it's this concept of giving without expectation, and then that way later you are able to receive when called upon, right? And so it's a really beautiful way human beings can do it naturally when we're in small groups. We do that. Children do it so beautifully, especially when you travel and, they don't even speak the same language and they've created this whole elaborate game. And, I remember hearing my sister talk about this game when she was like 5 in France. And my mom was like, you guys don't even speak each other's language. How'd you figure all that out? My sister was like, I don't know. We just did, you know? So it's amazing. I agree with you. People are amazing.
Yeah. And if you wake up every morning just wanting to bring someone else joy, the return for that, even though it's not transactional, the return for that's going to be tenfold. You are just going to end the day even more joyful because you have brought that to somebody else.
Absolutely. And they actually, so in gratitude studies, everyone's heard about like that. Let me write down 3 things I'm grateful for at the end of the day. Great. That's very good because what that's doing is it's training your brain, your reticular activating system to look for things to be grateful for. So as you go about your day, you're noticing good things that are happening rather than like getting locked in on the things you don't want. But the studies actually show the best form of gratitude practice is when you receive gratitude from someone else. That is what actually gives the biggest boost. So writing a little Post-it note for your partner before you leave the house, putting a little thing in your children's lunchbox, sending a note to someone that you haven't talked to in a while, a handwritten note, those kind of things and those expressions of gratitude of why you appreciate them can be so powerful. And that's another example of the ripple effect.
Exactly.
And so there is actual science behind it for those of you who are like, oh, just joy, whatever. It's like, no, actually, it works.
And it doesn't need to be $100 bouquet of flowers. Just like you said, it could be a Post-it note on the mirror. If you're leaving early for work, write a little note. It's going to lighten up their day the moment they wake up.
Yeah, absolutely. I write, so we've got this whiteboard on the side of the fridge. My partner travels a lot for work. So when he's gone, I write little notes on there when I'm thinking about him through the day. And then when he comes home, he gets to read all of those. And so that's just a really nice communication thing that we have. And, it is so meaningful to receive things like that. And you don't have to go and spend money. You can just, your time and your energy is what people want.
Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Tim, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's been an absolute pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to always be on this program because this is a wonderful conversation that is not just your normal cookie cutter aviation safety platform. But
Thank you
thank
so
you so much.
much. Yeah, you're so welcome. Where can people find you if they'd like to reach out and connect?
Oh man, smoke signals, snail mail.
Pigeons.
Yeah, drop them off. I think LinkedIn would probably be best. So
Okay.
the podcast is a Safety Wire podcast. It's on YouTube and LinkedIn and anywhere you get your podcasts. But also my LinkedIn page is about the only social media that I'm on right now. And contact me anytime you need it. And seriously, if you are involved in your safety program or if you have an up and coming safety program before you reinvent the wheel, if you need a little advice or if you need any help getting a boost, reach out. I'm happy to help you guys.
Amazing. Tim, thank you so much. This has been great.
It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Thank you. For everyone else who's watching right now, please stay tuned for this Friday, some fun with Sabrina Thompson. We're back on schedule to have her. She has designed spacesuits for women. And so we're going to be talking about space, engineering, and the arts and fashion. Next week, we also have another guest. So please subscribe on YouTube to stay tuned of other episodes. We'll see you very